Sure. Council
one is down.
Council Leahy.
no.
Council Kennedy.
Yeah.
Two present.
Thank you. I want to thank actually Mary, George, and actually the CNAC member for hosting this neighborhood listening session, election law listening session. We've been out to just about every neighborhood now. This is the seventh one, right? And some say that this may be the last neighborhood listening session, but you know, we'll leave it open. If we need to do a final one somewhere, we'll do it. But I want to thank CNAC for hosting this listening session, because it's important that that we come out with the support of the council, full council, and Councilor Leahy and Councilor Kennedy, that we out here, because your input is, your thought and input is very important to us as to how do you feel about the current voting system. We understand that there's a pending lawsuit out there. We're not here to talk about that lawsuit. We're here to listen to you about how you feel about that election, current election system. So without further said, I want to also turn it to Councilor Kennedy if you want to add anything to it, and then we open it up to you. Also, I want to recognize also the come to this election law meeting is Councilor Kennedy. So thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kennedy, if you want to add anything to it.
I don't really have anything to add to this one. I probably have comments as we go forward, but it's probably best that we just get started because it's warm in here. So
now, if you don't mind, take off my jacket. Yeah. All right, so I know that most of you have not been to other listening sessions. So if you'd like to start first, have your thought about how you feel about the current voting system. Do we need to change it? And do you feel that you'll be represented? So, anybody? Yes?
I think the current system sometimes over the years has left neighborhoods without strong representation. And a lot of it is because sometimes there's nobody within the neighborhood that runs for the council. But I don't like seeing neighborhoods of the city where there are many councilors from that one section of the city. I'd like to see it kind of like on the, and I'm not 100% sure I fully understand Boston's system, but to have one councilor from each neighborhood, and again, what neighborhoods are we talking about? That would have to be determined. I mean, you got like Centerville, Lower Centerville, Belvedere, Lower Belvedere. Is Belvedere and Lower Belvedere two different sections of the city, or is it one? Is Centerville two different sections or one? And I'm assuming that, and I could be wrong here, is that the number of councilors within the city of Lowell would remain at the number of 9? I mean, or is that an option as well of increasing the number of councilors? And if it isn't, and you get, let's say there's 6 neighborhoods, then one person from each neighborhood as a councilor, and then 3 at large. And you know, the 3 at large could all be from one of the from all one neighborhood. That's just my thoughts.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, please state your name, please.
Jim Kaporis, I live in this neighborhood. So it's my understanding that the basis of this meeting is that councilors live in the neighborhoods that they represent. Is that what this listening session is for?
go ahead. Let me just say a few things. The system that we have now, as everybody knows, is you elect 9 city councils, and we've had that system since 1944 going forward. And those 9 councils come from, you can run from anywhere, and everybody votes for all 9 councils.
Yes.
One of the things that we're considering, or that some people have suggested, is that we maybe should go to a mix, where we would have a mix of councilors who run at large, in other words, run throughout the city, and then other councilors that would just run in certain districts. And so that's one idea that's on the table. I should point out that the first city council that I was elected to had 5 members from the Highlands, 2 from Belvedere, 1 from Sacred Heart, and 1 from Pawtucketville. I think that should add up to 9. I don't think I left anybody out. And also, too, there have been times, for instance, in this past election, Centerville had, 3 candidates running for city council, 4 candidates running for city council, but chose other candidates rather than the candidates that were from their neighborhood. So I think that, and I also think that the members of the city council, whether or not, there may be, there's what, 6 or 7 that come from Belvedere now. But all of those, every member of the city council, no matter where they come from, feels as if they represent the entire city. In other words, a vote in Pawtucketville or a vote in Centerville has the same value to me, or to Vestner or to Karen, that a vote in Belvedere has. It's the same thing. So, so I think that that's an issue. And one other thing two other things that I think you should consider, and this was pointed out to me by the city solicitor a few weeks ago. There was a time, a few years ago, when there was a proposal to put a transfer station in the South Lowell area. And as it turned out, because there are 9 city councils that represent all 9 areas, the whole city, that proposal was defeated. Now, it was a proposal that was going to provide a lot of tax money to the city. So had it been that we had all district councilors, there would be a likelihood that some of the city councilors might say, well, it's not going to be in my district, and it's going to help the city, so I'm going to vote for it, which would then have left South Lowell stuck with the transfer station. But that didn't happen because of the system that we have now. But that's something that you have to be concerned about. The other thing that I am concerned about is that right now we have a city manager government, and I like city manager government because the legislative body and the executive branch are always in sync. If they're not in sync, then the legislative body gets rid of the executive and gets a new executive. However, if you have a strong mayor government, then they're not always in sync. And in fact, it's probably likely that some of the people who are on the city council think they should be the mayor. And so they're not going to be act in unison with the mayor. And so you could have a conflict between the 2 different branches of government. So those are things to consider. But Worcester has had a system for 30 years, a hybrid system where they've had councilors that have been at large and councilors that are district councilors. And it seems to work pretty good for them, and it has for 30 years. However, I would point out that most of the minority councilors that have been elected in Worcester have been elected at large, not within the districts. So you have to think about, I think if we're looking at changing the system that we have now, you have to play out exactly what will happen and what some of the results would be if you do that. Because once it's done, it's not so easy to undo it. It takes a long time to undo it as well. So I would just throw that out.
I think the next stage, should be, we're going to compile the input from every neighborhood group, that we went to. And the next stage is that should there be, the feeling is the unanimous feeling or majority feeling that there should be change and they want representation. I think the next thing this council, this subcommittee will have to do, or the council will have to do, is collect data of a peer community that reflect Lowell, and maybe Councilor Kennedy mentioned Worcester as one of those city or that we probably have to look at to see how it works to Lowell, and that's just one of the examples. Anyway, go ahead. Your name again? State your name.
Have you guys ever thought of like Worcester and Cleveland?
Ed, okay, thank you, Ed. Go
Have you
ahead.
guys ever thought of like Cambridge, Cleveland, Ohio, city manager and a strong mayor? Like, we people vote for the mayor, we still have a city manager. Have you ever thought of that? I mean, some cities do that.
Worcester does that.
Right.
Right,
Cambridge does that.
you vote for the mayor separately. I'm
Cleveland,
not sure
Ohio.
that Cambridge does that. I don't think that they do. I think they do the mayor the same way that we do it. But Worcester does it, but you would not call that a strong mayor. He's
No,
just,
not a strong
he's
mayor.
just
You have
elected
both.
separately.
You have both.
I guess I think that if we were to go to all district councils,
Right.
then we would need to go to strong mayor. Because you could have a situation where all of the councilors on the south side of the river could elect the city manager and lock out the councilors that are on the north side of the river. And then it would be that all of the streets that get paved are on the south side of the river and all of the, and just so forth and so on like that, which would be bad for the city overall.
Okay, Jenny? Yeah.
Heather Doss, have you considered, I live here in the neighborhood, a proportional style of electing a city council, like Cambridge?
We used to have, back in, when we started the planning system, we had proportional representation, the same as Cambridge. And then they got rid of it, I think, in the late 50s.
It's harder to understand as a voter, I
I was
think.
gonna ask if you could explain what that is.
What it is instead of going in and voting X for 9 councilors, you go in and vote members. So you'd have, your number 1 guy, your number 2 guy, your number 3 guy, and so forth.
So like ranked choice.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Jim?
Jim?
Go ahead.
Doris? So the concept that you're highlighting here, is this going to be on the City Hall website so people can read about it? Or does it go on the ballot for consideration? Or is it just subject for discussion now, like tonight?
The concept, the mechanic of what kind of system we are looking at, we have not delved into it. Simply we out here in all the listening sessions that we've been to is to hear how you feel about the current voting system. Do you think that it's representing every neighborhood, and do you think it needs to be changed? That's it. That's it. We today, just a few minutes now, we delve into the mechanic of it, which we have not played it out at all. We have not decided at all whether or not it should be changed as a council. Yes. Somebody else?
Renee,
Renee, go ahead.
Renee. What I noticed was speaking to family members of other people who've run, the amount of energy to run a campaign citywide when you're very well known in your neighborhood, whereas I believe there's lots of different people who can contribute all over the city, but they don't have the energy to run a citywide and to take care of a whole city, but they could focus on a neighborhood and where there are people of different experiences and talents and contributions. They don't have the time and energy to run for at large, but they could run and participate and be a part of, city government if they had a smaller chunk, of the city where they could contribute their talents and interests and expertise. It's just a lot to run for a whole city. And they have different experiences and different people being able the opportunity to run and represent. If they could just have a smaller piece of representation, it'd be more manageable to participate and run.
Well, thank you, Renee. Heather, are you good?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, I know that you don't want to make this about the lawsuit, but I think it's dishonest not to put up front that there may be a federal decision that decides that Lowell has to change our form of government if the lawsuit is ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. So while it's nice to pretend we're just talking about this like it's a good idea, like maybe we want to change it, maybe we don't, I think we have to, you all need to be really honest with the people in this room that there is a federal civil rights lawsuit, Voting Rights Act lawsuit against the city of Lowell. That there are 13, I think it is, people in the city of Lowell who are Asian or Hispanic who do not feel represented in city government. So it's not just a nice thing to talk about in the different neighborhoods. This may have nothing to do with the ballot initiative because the Department of Justice might say that we have to do something different. So I think that you're lacking some transparency when you say it's not really about the lawsuit. Because the reason these conversations started is because of a lawsuit that was brought against the city that is currently in process.
Well, actually, I start off by saying I'm not here to talk about the lawsuit, because it truly is, I'm not here to talk about the lawsuit. It's pending, yes, we recognize that as a council, but I can't talk about the lawsuit, you see, because it's being dealt with, it's pending. The matter is pending, And therefore, we here just to set out and say, look, I recognize there's an issue here. Therefore, I want to hear from you, the people, from each and every neighborhood. That's it.
So my follow-up question would be, what is the city doing to hear from the Hispanic and the Asian neighborhoods in Lowell, the ones who have brought the lawsuit?
We've been out there. The first listening session was at CBA. The second one was at CMA.
Yes.
So we've been out to every neighborhood. Yes. Go ahead, Ed.
Now, do you guys like have a time like 3-5 years or something like that, or is it just, I mean, I don't know, now we're talking about it, but is there like a time like they might change it eventually?
Two things. First of all, you asked them whether they had to stay 9 councils. It doesn't have to stay 9 councils. There could be 11, there could be 15 councils. All right, so that sort of would be open to do that. Second of all, we're not here to talk about the lawsuit, but in order to change the type of government that we have, there would have to be a referendum. So one of the things that we would look at, that we are looking at, is whether or not there's consensus to put forth a referendum that might be successful, or at least to be considered. And so that, that's kind of as far as it goes. We're not here to talk about the lawsuit. We're here to just stay focused on that. And Bessemer's remarks at the beginning, I think, were meant to just direct people, to have people stay focused rather than to get into the lawsuit and all of the rest of it. It's just not, it's not what this committee is considering. What this committee will consider doing is recommending to the full city council whether or not there should be a referendum to change the type of government and how that referendum should be, what that should look like.
Thank you.
Are there any items that have been brought forth through other neighborhood meetings that seem to be consistent no matter where you go?
I think that the hybrid comes up quite a bit, but what has also come up is that, we've been in other meetings where people like to have all district councils. We've been in meetings where people like it right the way it is. And they like having the idea, they like having it be that they can call any of the 9 city councils and get a response from any one of them. At the last meeting that we were at, one person suggested a city council that would be comprised of 15 people. And there would be a mix of district councilors, one from each ward in the city, say. So there'd be 11 ward councilors. And then there would be 4 at-large councilors. And the 4 at-large councilors would serve as the school committee. And that's sort of an interesting, that would be an interesting idea. And then that would tie in the city council to the school committee and would tie in the way that we budget the school department and the school department. In other words, instead of having it be the way it is now, where the city council thinks they give more money than is necessary to the school department, and the school committee thinks we don't give enough money to the school department, you would have people that would have to be responsible for both sides of the budget. So that would be unique. I don't believe that there's a government, at least in Massachusetts, that's like that, but that doesn't make it be a bad idea.
Well, this is all well and good, but the city is incredibly effective. It runs so well. It's the most highly diverse city. As a former newspaper reporter, I don't see a big issue here unless it ends up as a referendum. So it's nice to chat about it, but this is a successful city. And people I talk to say the same thing.
Thank you. Yes, your name?
Connie Morton, you may.
Connie, go ahead.
I haven't paid a lot of attention to city politics, to how the city runs, the city council. But I think I disagree that if people feel unrepresented, and if you look at the mix of the city and the makeup of the city council, then people are underrepresented, then I think we need to change something and do something to address that.
Thank you. Anybody else? About Marty?
I think, I said this at the last meeting because I went to see how it would go, but
when I ran back last year, I was always for doing something where it was a hybrid system because, as most of you know, I moved to Lowell from Boston. And one of the things that I see is that there are needs for the at-large system, there are needs for the district system, there are needs for to look at the city at a 30,000 foot level and at a 5 foot level. And I don't think that both are, you either have one or the other, and that hurts us in total. I also brought up that I think that the council, and I know was brought up the fact that you could have 5 people from one area decide who the mayor is, or one area decide, but that happens anyways. The manager is decided by the council, and the council is made up by people who come from certain areas. So, therefore, it already is happening. Just putting that out there, but I think that the mayor, in most cities, not all, but most cities, has a executive position, whereas in our city, it's a legislative position. It's no more than a city council president. And I don't think there's direct representation there. But those are just, I think that the hybrid system would be a step in the right direction, because then you would have some of the really good things where you have 9 people. Well, you wouldn't have 9 anymore, but you would have, say you went with the 11 and 4. You'd still have, 4 and 1. So that makes it 5 that you have. And there are people complaining that, I've heard it out there, that there are people that call and say, and I'm not saying anything against you guys, nothing against you guys, but in general, I've heard some people say that you call a counselor and they're afraid to, get things done because they have to, it's stepping, you don't want to step on each other's toes. That's what I hear. With 9 people, you can't get them. What makes you think that, with 5, if you can't get them with 5, you can't get them with 9. So I think somebody representing your area is very important. Karen is now from this area, which is a good step in the right direction. However, I think that at large, I think the city's getting too big to be able to, as Renee said, too hard to manage for 9 people to do the whole city. And it becomes very convoluted that way, I think. But I've always been a proponent of the hybrid system. Now, again, the other thing is if you don't like how things go, and I've been told this 100 times, make a movement in the community and get people out there and vote them out. That's the other way to do it. That's the traditional way to do it. But if it makes sense to do it because of non-representation, then a change in the system might be a good move in the right direction. I mean, we've been, how long, the last time we looked at the charter, how long did that last? That's the other thing I wanted to bring up, was the charter change happened before.
There was a referendum that was on the ballot at, do you remember when?
2009.
2009, and that failed.
Yeah.
So we've had, the system that we've had since 1940.
40 stuff. Oh, 40, yeah, 44. So, I mean, it takes time. It also, I mean, as Ed said, that once you choose a way, either you give it time, but you can't go back once you change it. So, but there are a lot of things to weigh. Does it mean that somebody is definitely going to get elected that you want from a certain area? No, that doesn't guarantee that.
No, but it does make it easier for people to have a chance.
It is,
like
and I would
Renee
agree with
said.
that. After running at large, I would agree with that, because it is very hard to run the whole city.
I think the other things that I heard had been mentioned is that the thing of the 13 people, all minority, it's not just them feel that way that we heard. The last listening session that we were at was that Secret Heart hosted, but they joined it with South Lowell. And there, almost unanimous spoke of that they felt like a forgotten neighborhood, sort of. That's what they said. So this is not about, so we understand, I understand, particularly myself, understand that it's not about minority. It's about representation. And that's why, and that's why everyone thought and input is really important to this council. And I can tell you, particularly to me, that I'm here, and that's why I take this out to listen to everyone input. It's important to me. If everyone input and they feel that if the current system is okay, then I will report it to the full council as such.
I just think it's important to remember that the people who are most likely to come to these kinds of meetings are people for whom the system is already working. If you feel like the system doesn't work for you, it's harder to get motivated to come and participate in a meeting like this. And that's why I think it's so important that your committee is doing creative things to get into communities that maybe don't feel represented, because if you don't feel represented, it's harder to get involved and know where to go and how to make your voice heard. You may feel afraid to make your voice heard. So that's what's really important to me, is that, you know, translation should be available at all of these meetings, and people who don't speak English should be getting invitations to these meetings in their language. And I feel like for this meeting, Centerville has a lot of Spanish speakers, and there wasn't a lot of publicity about this meeting in general. We tried to get some flyers out in Spanish, but you know, I didn't know if the city was going to have a translator here if anybody Spanish speaking showed up.
Well, the effort was made, and I know that particularly with the CMA listening session,
That went well.
we had about 80 people
Mhm.
there. So yes, we heard their input. CBA, first one, you know, first time it's not a whole lot of people, but enough people came and spoke and was translated at that meeting as well. So did at the Tuckerville subsequent to the CMAA. So you know, and interpreter was available as well at the downtown Lowell. So and yes, you know, we could have. It's the council. We tried. At least I did on behalf of my subcommittee. You know, send it all to. I'm not that sweet, am I? Send it all to neighborhood group and hoping to get their help. And that. So, yeah, Councilor Cirillo have comments.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to say too, hearing that a whole community of Lowell, who's very vital to the city. I mean, because every single person in the city is vital to the city. They're vital to the workings of the city. To hear that a community feels like they're forgotten is not, it doesn't bode well for me. It doesn't feel good, because they are such an important part of the community. And so that is something to think about when coming to these sessions. Do you feel like you're important? Because you are. Do you feel like your voice is heard? Because it should be. And this is why we're here. This is because we want to hear your voices, and we want to know how you feel, because it is important to us. And that's I'm not on this subcommittee. I'm here, and I've come to every meeting because I feel almost every meeting because I feel it's so important to hear what you have to say, because I want to make an informed decision when all the data comes in and we discuss it as a council. So I just wanted to put that out there. And also, you have an actual really fantastic grouping of city councilors here. You have a female from Centerville, a guy and then a Cambodian from the Highlands. So, you know, even though we did this at large, you have a really great grouping from certain different areas of Lowell. So I also did want to point that out.
Councilor Kennedy, and then
We've had 7 of these meetings, as Vesmer's pointed out. We've had them all around, and it was at the Pawtuckaville meeting which in the Pawtuckaville meeting they seem to like the system that we have right now. But at that meeting, there were several Hispanic ministers, and that's the group that we have the hardest. They just don't show up, and they don't participate, and they also, I think, don't participate in the electoral process. Mm-hmm. And so, what we thought would be a good idea is to have the ministers put together something, because they go to church, mm-hmm. and so and they would trust their minister. Mm-hmm. And so that we're hoping to have one more meeting at least with that group, and that would be a good turnout. But 7 meetings is a lot of meetings. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've been doing this for the past several months, and you know, we're doing the best we can, and we've you know, we've moved the show all around the city. We've been everywhere, and with different groups, as Vesta said, and the turnout has not always been that great. But I'm not sure that I agree with you that the people that come to these meetings like the system the way it is. I think that it's somewhat of a mix, and we've been at meetings where nobody in the audience or that's there seems to like the system that we have. It's just I'm not sure that there's been agreement over how to change it. And I also think that it's, you know, it's serious business. I mean, you really have to think out what you're doing and what's going to happen. What will be the ramifications if you change the system to a different system? And it's not that it can never be undone, but it cannot be undone easily, and it's going to take a while to undo.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Jim?
Just a simple comment. You made a great point. I'm sorry, I don't remember your first
Karen.
name.
Karen.
If people show up, if all groups from the city participate, like the Lowell Folk Festival I went to, everyone was there, same concept. If you show up, it'll get done. If you stay at home watching MeTV, it won't get done. It's simple. They have to, we have to, everybody has to get out there. This could have been filled tonight. Why isn't it? Where are they? Where are the people that are underrepresented? Are they here now?
Some of them
Did
are
they
working
hear about
second
this?
shift.
Oh, that's the
please,
point.
please.
It's a simple point.
Yeah. How was it
Connie,
publicized?
How was
please,
it- how
please
is
speak
everybody
into the
here?
mic. Jim, you're done?
I am.
Okay, Connie? Go ahead.
How was this publicized? Because I saw it on Facebook just like 2 or 3 days ago from I think the neighborhood association. But that's the only mention I saw of it anywhere.
The,
Connie, it got sent to the neighborhood group, and then for myself, I did send to all the nonprofit, and then also Facebook, and you probably saw on Facebook. I did include you know, a dozen or two of leaders from the minority community, sort of, because I wanted them to reach out to, bring people out. So that's what I did. So that's the answer to your question. Did I hear you?
Yeah, sorry, Nancy Cohen from
Nancy.
Lowell Lights. Yeah, I think it's not really the subject here, but in terms of the outreach, I think just counting on the neighborhood groups, my experience with at least a couple of the neighborhood groups is they're not really representative of the neighborhoods themselves. And I am glad that you made an effort to reach out to some community groups or nonprofits that work with different minority groups in the community. But yeah, I mean, we tried to work with a downtown group, we tried to work with CNAG to help promote it, and it didn't really go anywhere. So the promotion of it or the outreach wasn't
But I just
super
wanna-
strong.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, the Lowell line actually been very helpful in
Did our
helping
best,
people
yep.
and trying to reach out to people to come here. So anybody else?
I just wanted to say from CNAC, because I think that the problem was it was sent to George.
Yeah.
And George is no longer the president. And I think that Anne Marie didn't get it until the July 27th, which is the president. So she didn't know about it. And then I contacted her this weekend to find out if she was doing anything. And that's why it took so long to get out to everybody.
And I reached out to George. I reached out to Jack first, who told me to talk to George, and this is in early July, and I never heard back from George.
Yeah.
And I think Heather finally
Yeah, George.
got in
was-
touch
All
with
right,
Anne Marie.
let me take a few more comment, a few more input, a few more thought, and then we wrap the meeting up. Okay, thank you. Okay. Paul.
You know, neighborhoods are made up differently, and some of these areas, some of the neighborhoods get a tremendous following when it comes time for an election. People get out there and they vote. And any time that you've got a presidential election or a state senator, and it combines with the same time that the council is running, you get an awful lot of people out there voting. Central neighborhood doesn't get people out there to vote. And yeah, I wish I knew what the hell it would take to get them out there to walk into a school right here and put an X in the ballot for whoever they want. I've seen in the city where they've tried putting signs up at various major intersections, letting people know, and I thought that was a great idea. I know there's a lot of publicity about the voting coming up. usually starts in, it might start in August this year because we've got a primary coming up in September, and then it'll continue on through November. If you can't get the people out to vote, then you're not going to get the representation to change within the city of Lowell. Unless they get out and vote, the representation we're going to stay with. And I think you guys are doing a great job. I mean, I wouldn't want it with the way the city is, with the city manager and the 9 city councils. I think it's great. And, you know, some years you, as Councilor Kennedy said, one year, would you say it was 5 from the Highlands and then 6 from Belvedere? And who knows? Next year there might be 7 from Central. Who the hell knows? You know. But without people getting out to vote, this isn't going to change.
Well,
And unfortunately.
Thank you. Councilor Kennedy.
that's a good point, and that's really important. People have voted. It just befuddles me sometimes that, as you say, there's a big turnout in the presidential election. There's a smaller turnout when the state election comes out. And the smallest turnout is when it's a municipal election. And it isn't just Lowell, it's everywhere.
everywhere.
It's in the
Yeah,
towns
very
and it's
close.
everywhere. Yet, the government that has the greatest impact on your daily life is municipal government, not the state, not the federal government, it's local government.
Yeah.
Right, we're the ones who you come to speak to with your issues. We're the ones who are fixing the potholes and fixing your playgrounds and schools and so yes. So I find it a little odd that the municipal elections get the lowest turnout when that should be the powerhouse turnout for voters, because this is their city and these are the people who are going to be governing their city.
Heather and then Ed.
So I don't know if there's data to this end or not. I'm not a scientist, political scientist, but I wonder if having a district-based system can actually help increase voter turnout, because if people know their candidates a little better, they're more likely to go vote if you know somebody. I mean, I would say personally, so there may or may not be data to back that idea up, but.
Right.
I can answer that. In every community, there is a debate. And that debate is citywide, where not one question that's asked is the same for Centerville, Pawtucketville, Belvedere, the Acre, the Highlands. We go through, when we're running for city council, I think I went to 15 debates. It must have been around 15 debates, all throughout the city, given by different communities, the different areas of Lowell, and those debates are publicized everywhere: TV, radio, newspaper, online. So we're there because we want to hear the questions. We want the people to know who we are. And that's a fantastic way to meet your representatives and the people who you want to represent you. And then also there's Lowell Votes. And Lowell Votes is a non-partisan group who works so hard to bundle about 15 to 20 very city pertinent questions that we go into detail of and answer every single question, so that you get an idea of who you're voting for because of these questions and these answers that we give to you. And Lowell Votes gets that out in every way they possibly can. And I think that went out in Khmer and also Spanish this past year. It was phenomenal.
I guess I was thinking more of like personal knowledge of the candidates, not necessarily issues knowledge, but like if I know my candidate because he's in my neighborhood or she's in my neighborhood, am I more likely to go out and vote? And that's not, I mean, is there data for that, like on a nationwide level?
There is actually.
If I may, I know the young lady just arrived. We're here to listen to you, get your input and thought on how you feel about the current voting system. So that said, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go to her. Do you have any comment on it? Do you have any comment on it?
I'm actually just here to kind of listen.
Listening. Awesome. I don't want to do it. Ed, go ahead. And then Marty. And then after you hear from Ed and Marty, if you want to give a comment, you do that, and then we wrap it up. All right? Thank you.
I've worked a couple elections in the odd year and even year. Have you ever done having elections on the even year? It seems to get more, like 2018, these bigger turnouts. On the odd year, you don't get as much a turnout. They ever changed the even year elections?
There was a talk in some neighborhood that we went to talk about do it on weekends and do it online. You know, make it more people to come, and also maybe change it into the presidential. So yeah, it's a lot of those suggestions.
There's many different.
Much as just a suggestion, but I mean, I know
Suggestions out
like
there.
the presidential election, 2012,
Right.
was crazy.
Right. I mean, in most city and town, they do it on Tuesday. Probably there's a good reason for it. I don't know the reason, but you know, I mean, I'm not sure if do it on a weekend will get a great voter turnout because people there will be out to the beach or out somewhere. You know what I mean? So anyway, Marty, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say one thing. There is data for that because I did look at it. I ran in Boston too a long time ago, and I can tell you that coming from Boston, one of the years I ran, we had 13,000 people out of 125,000 registered voters come out. And that's a pattern. It's just the patterns that are going on in elections. So look for it online. There are places like UMass and those areas do those. But the second thing was that, to answer your question, it's a state law.
What's the state law?
Municipalities have to apply for a change. For a change.
You know, home rule. Yeah,
home rule petition.
Yeah, home rule petition.
That's why it's Tuesdays.
Be a charter change.
Yeah.
It would be a charter change.
But that would take a home rule petition, wouldn't it?
Or a charter commission.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna pick on you again. Do you have any input on it?
No, thank you, Beth.
Okay. Well, I know you just got here. I want to
Are
thank
there any other questions? Anyone else?
Councilor Kennedy, yes.
Can I just ask, how many people here like the system the way it is and think it should not change?
I don't know enough about it. I need to research it.
Okay. And how many people hate?
I used to be okay with the old system, but I kind of seen the experience of people I've known running and think it's just, the city is just too big for me to even attempt to run for anything.
Yeah.
I've kind of changed my view probably over the past year or two on it.
How many people would like the hybrid system where there would be a mix?
A mix of at-large and district, you mean?
Yes. Okay.
That said, motion to adjourn.
How does that compare to what, I'm sure you asked that question at other meetings.
Not every. No, we didn't. This is the
But
first one.
I thought it would be good to ask it here. So, and it was almost unanimous for the hybrid, it's with one abstention. So,
I do have one question. When, I think, Pastor, you and I talked several months ago about when the presentation, your presentation, based on the findings from this committee would be
When we
given.
wrap up, it sounds like Councilor Kennedy is going to entertain another listening session with the Hispanic the pastors.
Yeah.
So we're going to reach out. We're going to ask. I'm going to talk to Ad-Hoc to reach out and make that happen. All right. So Councilor Kennedy, motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Yeah, you're not second
Thanks.
The meeting adjourned. Thank you, Marty.
Before we leave, I'd like to point out that some of our election workers are here in the room, so I appreciate them for coming.
Thank you.
And being part of the current process. And I also would like to shamelessly recruit that if everyone would like to continue being part of what I